everybody, welcome back. It's day 3 of my holiday card series, and today I thought we would do a little bit of stenciling. So I'm using Nuvo glitter paste and Glimmer paste, which is such a cool product I haven't used in a while. I'm also going to be using a stencil from Simon Says Stamp and a stamp set from Mama Elephant. So let's go ahead and get started. I am using some Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock. And this die is called Lined Circles, again from Simon Says Stamp, and I absolutely love this stencil. When I saw it, I knew I wanted to include this in my holiday card series for this year. So the stencil is really intricate, and I love the circles, and I love the details of the lines. Usually I have a stencil that's just solid lines, but I love this one because it just allows me to have a little bit more texture on my card than I would if I just had the normal circles. So I'm laying my cardstock down onto my stencil, and I'm using some micro pour tape to keep it in place. This will allow me to stencil all the way to the edge and not have that little border that we normally get if we put the tape on top of the stencil. All right, so that is all set. Now I'm going to grab myself my Glimmer paste, and I'm also going to grab this color right here before I go anywhere else. It's called Rich Red, and it comes with the sponge dauber straight on top of the cap. As you can see, it's in there pretty tight, so it's not going to fall out. And I also am going to bring in a scratch piece of paper so I can start prepping the sponge. So I'm just dabbing it off onto the paste, and then I'm dabbing off any excess onto that scratch piece of paper and really starting to condition this brush. Now I will say you should mist your brush so it's a little bit damp before you get started, but either way it will work. So now since I have that little foam piece, I'm going to dip it into that gorgeous Glimmer paste, and then I'm going to start putting it onto the stencil. Now the stencil, because it has a lot of texture and a lot of lines, I'm going to work in various ways to get this down. So I'm going to go across to follow some of the lines. I'm going to go up and down to follow the rest of them, just to make sure I have even coverage. And you do not need a lot of this product. A little bit goes a long way. So as you can see, I almost completed the top portion of this card with just that one dab of paste that I had. As you can see, I'm dipping it in and scraping off any excess so it does not build up on my stencil. Now, since I have the majority of this covered, I'm going to go ahead and finish this off. And lastly, I'm just adding a little bit more in some of the spaces that were still white. Now, I think if you left some of this white, it would really look distressed, and it would also make for a beautiful card. I just wanted to make sure that most of my lines were filled in, so I had pretty much complete coverage on this card. Now, since that's done, I really want to step this up, and I'm going to go ahead and now pull out that glitter paste. Now this color is more of an iridescent color, so it's going to work perfectly on this. Now I have not used this product in quite a while, so the cap was a little bit stuck, and I just want to make sure that I mix up this paste so that I make sure that I don't have any dry areas if the cap was not on correctly. I just want to make sure it's smooth before I bring it to my stencil. As you can see, I like to start off on the edge of my stencil instead of putting it directly on my stencil, so I can get a good amount and start the process of laying this down in a smooth fashion. I'll go ahead and link above to some other videos I've done using this same technique. I'm just smoothing that on, trying to give me a consistent layer of this beautiful glitter. And I'm making sure to kind of fill in and overlap any areas. So once I pull this off, I will have a beautiful image. Now I'm just going to scrape off any excess that might be left on the stencil. And I'm going to grab a baby wipe and make sure that I clean off my palette. I do not want this to dry because I've had this palette for a while, and it isn't a price point that I don't want to ruin this and have to go out and purchase another one. Okay, now it's reveal time. This is the part I love every single time I stencil, is to see the design that comes about. So I'm gently peeling off that micro pour tape, being careful not to rip it, and look how gorgeous that is. Now I want to set that aside to dry, but I'm going to show you really quickly how I clean my stencil. I have a paintbrush and I use Dawn detergent. This seems to be the best detergent for me to clean off my stencils. I mix a little bit in with water. I go over my stencil with my toothbrush, and that gets it really nice and clean and ready for another card. All right, so for the sentiment today, I'm going to be using some black cardstock, and I'm going to use that SCRIPTY Christmas sentiment set from Mama Elephant. I truly love the font on this one here. You guys know I say it over and over again. I'm a font snob. I love, love, love pretty fonts. So I'm going to grab one of these to be that perfect sentiment for that background that we just created. Now, since I have that in my MISTI and I have it exactly where I want, I'm leaving a little bit of room because I want to die cut it. I'm coming in with my anti-static bag, and that's going to keep any of the embossing powder from sticking all over this cardstock. Now I have it where I need it, and I can go ahead and close my MISTI lid and go ahead and pick that up. Now this is going to be a really clean and simple card because I want the background and just this simple sentiment to be the masterpieces on this card. I'm using ink on 3, juicy ink. We've heard me say this before. It's like a watermark ink, so it's clear ink. And this is what you use when you have to do embossing. All right, that looks perfect. And now for my embossing powder, I'm going to use the Arctic White embossing powder. This is my favorite embossing powder. It's super, super white and it goes on like a dream. Just going to sprinkle some of that on there and then tap off any extra. And because I used my anti-static bag, I don't have a lot of leftover embossing powder that is sitting on that black cardstock. Now I'm going to funnel this back in because I do not want to waste any of this. And then I can go ahead and start heating up my gun, my heat gun, to make sure it's nice and hot before I bring it to the paper. Now you guys have seen me do this several times. I like to heat from the front and the back side of my paper. This just keeps the embossing powder from blowing everywhere, and it actually heat sets it a little bit faster than if you were just doing it on the front side. But this embossing powder is such a vibrant white. It is now really my go-to embossing powder. All right, that looks pretty good. And again, love the font. I'm going to grab myself a circle die to cut this out. So this is I believe it's my favorite thing, stitch circles. I'm going to go ahead and run this through my die cut machine. And then I'll have a nice little sentiment to go onto the front of my card. Now to jazz this up just a little bit, I am going to grab my Jelly Roll pen. And this is a number 10 size. And warm that up on my finger to make sure it's working correctly. And then I'm just going to put in some additional faux white stitching. This is just going to kind of mimic the lines that I have on my background. Now, since I have that completed, we can go ahead and start building up my card panel. Now, this card panel probably set aside for maybe 20-25 minutes. I went ahead, set it aside, started working on some other stuff, and now it's completely dry. I did trim down this panel just a tad bit because I did want to mount this on some coordinating black cardstock. That's just going to pull in that black from that sentiment and really ground this piece here so it just doesn't look stark white against my card base. So I'm just going to line that up. And I put the black onto the card base so I can kind of see the edges of it better instead of just leaving it on my craft mat. Now I did leave a little bit of black just down the sides of this panel. I didn't worry about the top of the bottom too much. I just kind of wanted it along the sides, just like I said, to ground this piece. Next, I can go ahead and put this card panel right onto that card base. And the card base, by the way, is Neenah Solar White, 110 pound. That is my go-to card base paper because I really like the weight of this paper as it stands up if I have to put multiple card panels on top of it. All right, I'm using my mat to help me line this panel up and get it directly where I need it to go. Now I do want to add a few more elements to this, and you guys probably know what's coming. It's going to be sequins. So I just want to pull in some of the red onto my little circle, as well as just some crystals, some clear crystals. But before I do that, I am going to foam mount my sentiment. I'm using 3M foam tape for this, just a couple of strips and I'll be fine. And that is just going to go into the center part of this card. And I like that I have the circle on my background and I also have the circle of that sentiment. I thought that this way everything would marry up prettier together than me doing a square sentiment. So I'm just repeating the design of this card. Next, I'm just going to grab a few red sequins, and I don't want to add many because I don't want it to overpower this card. But I do feel like I need to bring a little bit of that red up onto that sentiment piece, and I'll add just a few of the clear drops just for a little added accent. I am using the Gina K Connect glue for this. And I'm using my pick tool that I happen to pick up from Amazon. Now I just need to add just a few of these, like I said, around my card. And that's pretty much going to finish off the card today. So if you guys missed day 1 and day 2, I'll make sure to link them above and link them below. Thanks so much, you guys, for hanging out with me. And I will see you for card number 4 soon. Have a great day, everybody. See you later. Bye-bye.